that's my number 6.
Amazing pick, and yes, it is on my list to come up. Yeah, I guess I can't really talk any more about it because I'm going to bring it up and we'll talk about it more then.
Yeah, save it for when you bring it up.
Alright, so on to number 5. My number 5 is the final fight on GMK, Giant Monsters All Out Attack. Before talking about the fight, I would like to mention something ironic. When Daiei was making the Showa Gamera series, they called for special effects workers from TOHO who worked on the original Godzilla. Now in the Millennium series, TOHO calls people from Daiei who worked on the Heisei Gamera films to work on their Godzilla film. Every one of the key players in the making of the Heisei Gamera films worked on GMK. That includes the director, the music, the screenwriter, the actor who plays Gamera. It was crazy. And boy, does it show in the final fight. As did the Gamera trilogy, GMK ends with one of the best executed scenes ever made, with human drama, heart-pounding action, and great music by Kao Otone, who also did the music for the Gamera trilogy. The Godzilla suit looks amazing and real, much like Gamera and Gamera 3 Revenge of Eris. Everything with this fight, they nailed on the head and drove it in the ground. The director of all 3 Gamera films also worked on this, Shusuke Kinoko, and brings his own style and uniqueness to the Godzilla series, and it won't be one that will soon be forgotten. The fight between Godzilla and King Ghidorah is what I picture a fight between the two would look like. There is high shots, close-ups, lots of explosions, emotion between the two monsters, and death and destruction to follow. I find it funny how they created Ghidorah to be a good guy in this film, and not a horrible alien or mutated monster like in the others. The creators of this film add a great deal to the aspect of religion, atomic warfare, and honoring the dead. The ideas that still generate over to this day. That is what makes a good G film. My favorite part of the fight is when Ghidorah resurrects from being shot by Godzilla's atomic ray. The screen just lights up with gold, and the music plays loud, and then the wings open to show Ghidorah's full power. Now that is what I want to see in every G battle. So that's my number 5.
That is also an amazing pick. I love that fight scene. And one of my favorite images of King Ghidorah in the entire Godzilla series is that shot where his wings expand and lightning strikes and he rises out of the ashes of his death. It's really just a great scene. Wow, it's just incredible. If there was ever a fight scene between those two that inspired my Shadow of Godzilla story, it was that.
Yeah. It's a great fight. It starts on land, ends in the water. It's great. It's just really great. And Ghidorah looks amazing.
He does.
At first, how he looked. Actually, I hated how all the monsters looked. But then as I started maturing and growing, I began to understand why they looked the way they looked. And I began to understand why that they look that way, and I thought they all look so real and so great. And as I said to you before, like before recording in other days that we just talked together, if that Godzilla suit was used in another Godzilla film after this, it would not work. This Godzilla film works. This Godzilla suit works for GMK and nothing else, which is perhaps one of the reasons why I like the suit a lot.
That's so true, because the suit was designed to embody what Godzilla is symbolizing in this film, and that's the evil, heartless monster that's just ravaging and destroying Japan. And those blank eyes, I never thought I'd say I liked Godzilla with no pupils. And like you said, this is the only time it worked.
Right. All right, so you're number 5.
My number 5 is one that Godzilla's not even in. And that's from the original Gojira, Ogata versus Serizawa. Ogata has gone to Serizawa with Emiko. Emiko has revealed to Ogata the secret of the Oxygen Destroyer. Her telling him that it's the only weapon that can kill Godzilla. They go to see Dr. Serizawa, who, the reason why he wanted Emiko to keep it a secret was because it's such a deadly weapon that it wouldn't even be worth using it on Godzilla, because if put in the wrong hands, it could level a city. And to quote from Godzilla vs. Destroyer, if the weapon had been used on land, Tokyo would be a graveyard. It's worse than the atom bomb, is pretty much what the film is telling us. And the tension, the cinematography, the gritty look, the gothic look, all add to this confrontation between these two men who both once fought for this woman's affection. And now they're kind of doing it again, but in a more subtle way. Not only is Emiko's love hanging in the balance, but it's also Japan and the world's safety. And ultimately, Serizawa decides to go that way. And then it leads to one of the best scenes or one of my favorite scenes in cinema history, but I'll talk about that a little later. Wow, I love this confrontation.
Yeah.
In both versions, even in King of the Monsters, it's done well.
I really love Ishiro Honda. Ishiro Honda felt very uncomfortable shooting like fistfight scenes. And I love how when Ogata bursts into Serizawa's lab, and I have no idea what Serizawa is about to do, which is sort of scary.
Yeah.
But I love how the camera just pans over, and you see you just see the tank with the fish swimming in it, and you just hear what's happening, and then you hear Emiko scream.
Yeah, it's really great.
Which I honestly think there's some symbolism in that, with Emiko screaming. And I think that is two countries fighting, and then one is caught in the middle.
Ah, that's interesting.
Which, look at it. America, Russia, Japan's in the middle.
That's true too. Very true. Which was also brought up later in Egypt and Freedom Monster.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe I don't have anything on that on my list. That's also a great show. Last thing I want to say is, I said gothic, and I meant it. Serizawa is just, if Ishiro Honda, or if the Hammer team ever made a Godzilla film, I don't even think they can make it look as gothic as Serizawa's lab looks. Serizawa is the Japanese version of Frankenstein. And instead of creating a monster, he creates a weapon that could destroy the entire world. And, oh god, I'm going to talk about it later. I'm going to get more into it later, but, him picking the world, it's pretty much a lose-lose situation in his eyes. We can either be destroyed by Godzilla, or we can be destroyed by the Oxygen Destroyer. And, Dr. Serizawa is one of my favorite characters in all of cinema. And, I'm going to talk about him a little later. I'm going to save that for later. So, Adam, your number 4.
My number 4 is The Death of Shindo. And this is what I have to say about it. Not only is this one of the best G films ever made, but it is also helmed to one of the most tragic characters of all time. That is Mr. Shindo, who is now the owner of a huge corporation and served in the Japanese army at the end of World War II. On the island, he damns Godzilla for an eternity of death and destruction. Now, after the people from the future erased Godzilla from history and made Ghidorah to replace him. So he, with the help of the Japanese military and governmental forces, sends out a nuclear submarine to revive Godzilla. And again, damns him. I love how he does not want to do this, but he puts his country above himself. I'm sure that I'm overthinking this part, but I think it's probably that soldier coming out in him. I just love how throughout the film the director toys with us, how he truly feels towards Godzilla. He feels for him and knows what penalty he must pay for having to do this to Godzilla now twice. Right before the final attack between Godzilla and King Ghidorah, Godzilla and him make eye contact, with Maestro Ifukube leading the way in this with his haunting, powerful score. Shindo and Godzilla connect and remember each other. I love how the writers know Godzilla's character enough that they can actually make him tear up, and Shindo is the same way. Shindo wants to die. He realizes that this is the only way for Godzilla to forgive him, and perhaps the only way he could forgive himself for producing such a monstrosity. At first, Godzilla doesn't want to do it, and looks away, but Shindo convinces him, and Godzilla kills Shindo. Shindo is my second favorite character from the entire Godzilla series, and he is the second most three-dimensional character to be shown in on the big G screen. This is truly a tear-jerking moment and a great scene for characterization for Godzilla himself. There. It's my number 4.
Wow. Again, I completely agree. It's one of the finest scenes in all of the Godzilla films. I already talked about it, so I say we leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. So, your number 4.
My number 4, also from the Heisei series, and I have this marked down strangely in my book here. I have it marked down as 2 things: Godzilla's meltdown / Godzilla's third death. If you count down, according to the Heisei continuity, Godzilla dies 3 times. 1 was back in 54, the Oxygen Destroyer. 2, he's killed by Mechagodzilla and resurrected. And 3, he melts down. Godzilla's meltdown is equally, if not more so, powerful to me than the death of Superman. It's the death of an idea and the completion of a decades-old character arc. And it's simply astounding. Again, Akira Ifukube's Requiem is one of the most powerful pieces of music I have ever heard, and again, it's underplayed, like we've been talking about. Akira Ifukube, while his big, boisterous, rhythmic, marching band, army kind of marches, while they're fantastic and really catchy, his underplayed stuff almost can make a whole Godzilla scene work. And if it's not there, it sometimes doesn't work. And in this scene, I can't imagine it with any other music. And the cinematography is also just beautiful. This blinding flashes of white light, which I kind of take as allusions to the original film.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like Godzilla's own power is, well, of course that is what's happening. Godzilla's own power is killing him. And what was he doing in the first film? There was a blinding flash of light under the water. And what's killing Godzilla? Blinding flashes of light. Godzilla's meltdown was one of the few scenes in my childhood that made me cry. And even though I don't really cry anymore watching it, I still get a little teary-eyed, and I choke up a little bit. It truly is one of the most powerful scenes in all of cinema to me. It's just incredible. I've said this before, it's easily one of the greatest endings to a film series of all time. And that's all I have to say about it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I can't really talk much about it because it's coming up in my list. Yeah, great. It is truly one of the saddest moments in Godzilla history. But we can talk about it more when I bring it up.
Sure.
So, my number 3 is the original, the final Godzilla destruction scene from the original Gojira. Holy shit, is this scene frightening. Every single shot in this sequence is mapped out to the slightest detail, from flames to even how the audience looks at G. I felt like I was watching a documentary of the fire bombings in Tokyo and witnessing a walking nuclear bomb, which is what Godzilla represents. This scene is so horrifically put together. People are trampled, burned alive, crushed under rubble, and then the aftermath has people dying of radiation poisoning and burns. For 1954, this sequence was extremely gruesome, and I could only imagine what the Japanese were like viewing this in theaters. This would throw World War II right back in their faces just after they began to rebuild a better world for themselves. Perhaps this is why the scene is so haunting and tragic. Godzilla is the evil of war and perhaps mankind. Honda is a master of allegory, and this is his greatest example as well as his greatest film. Each time I watch it, I felt as if I was there and sucked into the film. The part of the destruction that I remember the most was cut from the Americanized version. It's a part where the mother is holding her daughter while sparks and flames slowly consume her, and she says, "Soon we will be with Dad, just a little bit further now." I nearly cried watching that. This makes clear connections to World War II, for perhaps the father was a soldier, or even a victim of the bombing of Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Anyways, the scene takes your breath away, and the somber music doesn't help any. Akira Ifukube's masterful score only adds to the emotions boiling in the scene. Actually, he was the first composer to have his orchestra record in front of a screen watching the scene. He felt as if the orchestra would play more emotionally if they were watching the destruction scene unfold. It shows, too. I almost felt the pain everyone went through making this film.